If you want to create visual story deck presentations that take dull, monotonous, and boring text, numbers, big data, or complex analytics and bring them to life with engaging chart-based visuals, making you a great presenter who commands attention and motivates audiences to take action, then you'd want to pay close attention to this because you're about to discover a simple and proven framework for creating stellar presentations that leave your audiences asking for more. Whether you have a lot of experience or no experience at all, you stand to benefit from this. My name is Sam Schreim, and I work in one of the most secretive industries in the world, an industry that employs a few thousand senior strategy consultants worldwide who have mastered the art and science of storytelling with charts, a skill that is continuously growing in demand and popularity. I don't know anyone who doesn't need or write presentations. Aside from every professional, entrepreneur, consultant, civil or public servant that I know, just about everyone uses or delivers presentations. Starting with my wife, who's a business owner and who's currently preparing a pitch to seek VC funding and a loan for her startup. Or my 15-year-old daughter, who's campaigning for high school club presidency and will be presenting her plans to win the hearts and minds of her classmates. It doesn't matter if you're a PowerPoint, Tableau, Prezi, or Keynote-like presentation software user. If you are someone who needs, uses, writes, or designs presentations or decks, you came to the right place. I started my career in corporate America working for GE, which at the time was the largest and most valuable company in the world. Presentations were part of my weekly routine. My career and professional growth depended on how well I communicated my work and accomplishments in the form of presentations to my superiors. Colleges and universities don't prepare you for delivering real-world, corporate, and professional presentations. My career took a turn when I left corporate and switched to strategy consulting. Strategy consulting is a secretive niche within the global management consulting practice. It's a $1 trillion industry growing annually at close to double digits. A few elite firms dominate this niche and get away with charging 4-figure hourly and 5-figure daily fees to take on sensitive, confidential, and secretive strategic issues for states, leading corporations, and the public sector. That's why in the course of my work, I had the privilege of advising and working with CEOs, C-suite, leading diplomats and men of state on my engagements. But in between and before switching back to consulting, I became a serial entrepreneur where I established and later sold several startups for which I also had to continuously design and deliver pitch decks and investor status reports. In the course of my work with the world's leading strategy consulting firms, my presentations and decks help these elite firms secure and deliver over $500 million in advisory work. Most people don't know that these elite firm staff spend 80% or more of their time designing charts and building PowerPoint decks and C-suite level presentations, and for their time, clients pay them gigantic fees. When I started my career as a strategy consultant, I was recruited straight out of college. Having just spent $250,000 on my MBA from Columbia, I thought I would hit the ground running. What followed next was shocking to me. As soon as I was assigned to a project, the principal on the project at the time called me into his office. When I went into his office, he quickly put out a cigarette, then took out a printed 500 deck from his drawer and slammed it on his desk and said, "We need to deliver something similar or better than this in the next 8 weeks. Why don't you give this a read and get inspired and meet me back here with the team in a couple of hours?" As I went through the deck, it turned out to be the final deliverable of another team who had worked on an almost identical assignment about a year earlier. What ended up happening on this assignment, and most future assignments that followed, is that we would spend the first week on site interviewing client staff, then we would retreat to our office for the remainder of the time, where we spent the entire time drafting presentation decks for our partners to deliver to the client in chunks. I was in shock at first because I thought as a strategy consultant, we had to roll up our sleeves and work directly with clients to solve problems. But that aside, I really struggled to create such decks during my early years in consulting. In fact, I got so desperate and thought I would never master the art of deck creation that my senior colleagues were doing in their sleep. Neither my corporate career nor my MBA prepared me for this. In my early years in corporate, I worked hard at managing new product launches and developing excellent turnaround plans. Still, I needed to work on communicating my work to senior executives to get the credit. GE was famous for their training programs, and I had tons of corporate training on creating slides and delivering presentations, but it was nothing like this. While I did master how to physically deliver a presentation, it was only to offset my disastrous looking slides. Unfortunately, my slides reflected only some of the hard work and accomplishments. But all the good work was wasted and lost in translation because I could not bring them to life in the slides that I created. And later as a consultant, I got so desperate to try to master the art of storytelling with charts that I memorized everything the firm had to offer in terms of training material. I went and purchased every book and method available on the market. But little did I know that all available commercial methods are taught by artists, coaches, and designers, and not by practicing professionals or the senior strategy consultant that really knew their stuff. None of these books, courses, or methods touch on the real problem or the root cause of the issues that I faced. And I wondered, why didn't these methods work for me? The main reason was that I was taught wrong from the beginning, and it was hard to transition and lose the old habits and principles that were taught in commercially available methods. You'll discover in a bit that these methods teach the wrong approach and skills, which can worsen your heuristic presentation design skills rather than improve them. What frustrated me the most was that my more senior members could do these presentations in their sleep, and I couldn't figure out how they learned them. They were not smarter or better than me, but they intuitively had it in them and I didn't. Making matters worse was the fact that these elite firms, one of which I worked for, had an up or out policy. And I started to think that I was on my way out. But then I suddenly felt that things started to change in my second year when I finally stumbled upon the secret for accelerating my learning skills. I figured out that back then, the only method that worked for everyone was brute force learning. In other words, I had to keep submitting raw decks to my seniors in order to receive the feedback that I needed to improve my skills until I finally got it right. But to do so, I had to shed and forget everything I learned or was being taught commercially and start from a blank slate as if I was learning something entirely new. I recognize that commercial methods are taught by people who have not practiced the skill long enough in real life. But now that I was playing with the big league of elite strategy consultants, my commercial skills needed a major overhaul, and I had to learn a new approach practiced by the world's highest paid professional. Let me bring up some of the examples of the common myths and pitfalls which helped me back early in my career, which I think you'll find helpful. Myth number 1. Look and feel is the most important aspect of a presentation. Many people think a professional presentation is about the look and feel and how beautiful or nice the design looks, right? Wrong. I'm not saying that you can have ugly slides. However, getting your charts and slides to look professionally designed can be done in a snap these days with templates and cheap tools like ThinkCell and PowerSuite, or simply by sending them to an offshore designer for $10 an hour who can get them done for you quickly. After all, back then when I worked for the elite firms, I would send my slides to an offshore designer who are available 24/7 to clean up the design according to my specs and templates. And there you have it. Creating good-looking slides is the simplest and cheapest task to accomplish. That's why it's not the most important aspect of a presentation. So if design is not the important aspect of a presentation, what is? What's most important is something called horizontal logic, which I'll get to in a minute. But before I do, let me tell you about one of my biggest challenges as a strategy consultant. One thing I didn't mention earlier is what happened to me when I finally mastered the skills of my senior members and got promoted to manager. I thought I'd made it and was out of the woods, but I found myself facing another wall. To succeed in the field of strategy, or to make it to partnership, I had to build a team. That meant teaching my skills and what I learned to newbies. I had to ramp them up to speed very quickly, or else I'd be spending all my time reviewing and fixing their work on top of mine and would again be faced with the up or out firm policy. The alternative was to do both, my work and my team's work, until they're up to speed with the process the same way I did, which meant sleepless nights and no weekends. That's why the first thing I had to avoid was letting my apprentices or my team members run through the same issues I faced when I first started. And that meant by not sending them to commercial training and asking them to ignore any commercial guides and books that they've learned or read in the past. So I realized that I had to develop my own training material. If you leave with nothing else after you've seen this, leave with this one lesson. Lesson number 1. Don't follow commercial methods. Long story short, it took me almost a decade to get the method right, which you are now seeing and will shortly have at your fingertips. Myth number 2. Start with the data and tell your story with data. Most people think that starting with the data on hand before structuring the presentation is the way to go, right? Well, wrong again. Storytelling with data by starting with the data first is like having a solution that's looking for a problem. Data is there to support your headline message or claim, not the other way around. That's why if you start to build your story based on available data, you'd be going about this backwards. Moreover, not all charts are data-driven. In fact, almost half or more of the charts in the presentations are conceptual or qualitative charts based on a framework or other visuals that are not driven by numbers or data. So how should you go about this instead? Lesson number 2. Horizontal logic comes before vertical logic. If you have not heard these terms before, let me take a minute to explain them to you. Horizontal logic is the flow of your story or the sequence of the slides and charts in your presentation. The basic idea of horizontal logic is that if you were to pull all the headlines from your charts in a sequence and read them out loud, they would be telling a story. That narrative or storyline extracted from the headlines and the charts should flow flawlessly. Think of the horizontal logic as the glue that holds the entire presentation together through the narrative of your story. Every single slide or chart that makes up the horizontal deck is what's commonly referred to as vertical logic. The reason both vertical and horizontal flows are referred to as logic is because what defines the vertical logic in a slide is the logical relationship between the headline message and the supporting content or chart visual underneath each headline. While the logic of the flow of the headlines which make up the storyline is the horizontal logic. Myth number 3. Keep your presentation short. You must have heard that you should keep your presentations as short as possible and to limit the number of slides, overloading the slides with information and data, right? Wrong. And wrong again. I am constantly being told only to create a few slides, especially if I had a presentation to a C-level person or head of state or some senior person who are quote-unquote busy people. The rationale is because busy executives only have little time on their hands. Translation, I needed to cram as much as possible on a single slide, so I would not have to have too many slides to present. The result? My decks were disastrous. So lesson number 3, always maintain the one message per slide and the so what factor rule. You need to understand that persuasion is attained through simple slides. In fact, in persuading and the art of science of storytelling with charts, the principle of less is more prevails. It would take just as long or less to present 2 messages on 2 slides as it would take to present 2 messages on a single slide. Therefore, making a presentation short may be one of your objectives, but the presentation should never be shorter than necessary. Lastly, when you complete your slides, always ask yourself, so what? This litmus test lets you ascertain whether your content, visual, and message hit the goal and objectives of the presentation or claim that you are making. If the content fails this test, you got 2 choices: remove the slide or lose your audience. All in all, applying what I learned throughout my career towards the challenge that I mentioned earlier, when I had to nail the process of training new employees and ramp up their knowledge and proficiency level in record time, I decided to structure the process into a master framework and to package it into a simple toolkit for use by anyone, whatever their background. I ended up designing the first prototype almost a decade ago. Then I put it into use by testing it on the rookies on my team. While the pilot initially worked for some people, it didn't quite get there and work for everyone. It took me several years to test and refine different methods and sequence to make it work for everyone. I realized that if I wanted it to succeed, I had to get the tool to work for everyone and anyone in less than a day of learning time, in order to properly and quickly be able to scale up my team. I had to test it on a larger pool of people and get feedback from everyone. So I offered it conditionally to senior colleagues of mine who snatched it and started experiencing amazing results for their team. Over the 5 years that followed, I wanted to make it work for just about anyone and not just employees of the consulting industry. So I gave it away to anyone who needed to create presentations and continuously gathered feedback from my colleagues and the general public until I was able to package it into the simple toolkit that it is today. A simple system consisting of a 5-step framework that can be consumed in less than 2 hours to get anyone to proficiency in storytelling with charts. If you'd like to get your hands on this system, I've created a toolkit that you will absolutely love. It contains everything you need to master storytelling with charts, or STC. It's a proven system that has been put into actual use by the world-leading strategy consultant who specializes in storytelling with charts. You can immediately start using it to create professional-grade presentations, report, or pitch decks based on a proven and tested framework that has been refined for over a decade to bring it to its current level. By using this toolkit, you'll master the method that's being used today by a few thousand elite professionals who adopt storytelling with charts in their everyday, real-life applications, and ones who get paid 4-figure an hour to do just that. Inside this toolkit is everything you need to master the art and science of data visualization. My colleagues started saying that fresh college grads who have never seen strategy decks before started creating amazing advanced level charts on their first day. They could not believe how easy it became to induce people into the process. In fact, I made this toolkit so easy to consume and understand that I tested it on my 14-year-old daughter who relies on the framework in all her class projects. Now, she consistently wins projects and ranks on top of her class. Because of the skills that she learned, she now consistently wins class projects and ranks on top of her class. Once you try this, you'll never approach presentation the same way. You'll discover that it's the only user manual that you'll ever need to create presentation and decks that will wow your audience, leaving them asking for more. You'll find that you don't need to worry about data analysis paralysis. The system will take you directly to the few data points you need to build a compelling storyline with impactful visuals. You'll be able to address the so what factor litmus test head on with at least 80% fail rate reduction compared to traditional methods. But what's important to note is that this is not a course. It's actually better. It's a toolkit with a tutorial that takes less than 2 hours to consume. A course takes days. But this toolkit works like an instruction manual. Think of it like assembling an IKEA piece of furniture. You don't need to understand how the design was developed. You only need to follow the instructions in the user's manual. You know that in the end, you'd have built the piece you've seen on display or in the catalog before you purchased it. You can put this toolkit immediately to use from the package you'll receive. You'll get cheat sheets, step-by-step frameworks, fill in the blanks, and actual charts that you can copy-paste into your presentation. The framework is broken down into 5 phases and steps. Each stage has its own templates and frameworks. You will also receive access to a series of instructional videos. Each video is around 10 minutes long. In the video, I've made the instructions so simple that they work like this. 1. Fill in the blanks using framework. 2. Look up in the cheat sheet. 3. Copy paste, use templates provided. 4. Resize and reformat. 5. Fill in the blanks. That's how simple it is. As I've mentioned, this is nothing like any commercialized product or course you may have seen elsewhere. This product was designed for highly paid professional strategy consultants who get paid 4 figures an hour to do what's in the toolkit. But the product was tailored to work for anyone regardless of background, age, or prior experience. Non-comparable commercial courses and products that contain only video tutorials, which by the way, teach you the wrong approach, cost at least $1,000. If you were to look for similar material, templates, and cheat sheets that are included in this toolkit on the web, you'd be racking up additional hundreds of dollars, which won't give you any kind of professional level content that you need. But the biggest value you'll get from this toolkit is time. You don't need to spend days or weeks learning ineffective or methods that will send you in the wrong direction. You'll only spend 2 hours consuming the entire system's content and you'll be on your way to building professional presentation. Time is a currency that you cannot take back or replace after it's gone. If I were to value the time and opportunity cost that I've saved from giving this toolkit to newbies or trainees, it would be at least $100,000. And don't forget, you'll be walking away with a system that delivers instant results. You don't have to spend time going through courses, taking endless classes, but you can have the entire toolkit for just $47. And the best part is, you're protected by our guarantee, which is not 30, not 60, but 90 days. That's right, 90 days. That's how certain I am that this toolkit will change the course of your career and professional lives when you put it to use. Use everything you get from the toolkit for 90 days, truly put it to the test, and if this doesn't change everything for you, simply send us an email at support@storytellingwithcharts.com and I'll immediately refund your money. No questions asked, so click the button below and get started today. As soon as you place your order, you'll receive an email that gives immediate access to your toolkit. Remember, if you want to create powerful stories that transform data into engaging presentations that persuade your audience to take action, then you absolutely need Storytelling with Charts Toolkit. Inside this toolkit, you'll find everything you need to master the art and science of data visualization in less than 2 hours and immediately start building your professional level presentations. With this toolkit, you'll get to master the method used today by a few thousand elite professionals who get paid 4 figures an hour to do just that in a highly secretive work environment. This system has been tested and put to use by the world's leading strategy consultant and has been refined for over a decade to bring it to its current form. Think of this toolkit as assembling an IKEA piece of furniture. You only have to follow instructions to get what you purchased. Each video is around 10 minutes. After viewing the video, I've made it so easy that the instructions provided are as simple as fill in the blanks, look up cheat sheets, copy paste, resize and format, fill in the blanks, and voila. This toolkit could easily sell for $1,500, but you can have it today for $47. So get it today, as I don't know how long I will keep this offer available and for this price. Don't forget, you'll be walking away risk-free with a system that almost instantaneously delivers results as you are protected by our 90-day guarantee. And by the end of the 90 days, if you still think this doesn't change everything for you, simply send us an email at support@storytellingwithcharts.com and I'll refund your money, no questions asked. So don't miss out. Click the button below and get started today. As soon as you place an order, you'll receive an email from me with access to your toolkit, and I'll see you on the other side.